Good morning, David, and I am super looking forward to our conversation.
Good morning, Bobby. I'm thrilled to be here, and yeah, looking forward to it as well.
Perfect. So, I had this thought that was prompted, I think, by another podcast that mentioned Ikigai. And then I just did a search on LinkedIn, and you came up as
Ah,
a Ikigai guy. So, tell us a little more about yourself and what are you doing?
sure. I think maybe what I'll start with is also explaining Ikigai as I teach it. A lot of you probably found when you did your search the four circle Venn diagram of Ikigai, and
Yeah.
um, I call that the Venn garden. That's that's not really Ikigai, and it's a very career centric approach. And the Ikigai I teach is you are experiencing your essence, who you are at the deepest level, your purpose, why you're here, all in harmony with whatever you're doing. And I came to understand that through a number of I hope interesting career twists and turns. I've had a varied career. I started when I was 16 years old. I walked into a radio and TV station and asked for a job and got one, and worked in commercial radio and TV for 7 years. Then, to give you an idea of how crazy that business is, I joined the United States Marine Corps to have a saner life. And so I was a
Marine
sergeant in the
Corps.
Marines. Yes, I was a sergeant in the Marines for a number of years and worked on fighter jets, and then became an engineer in a couple of different disciplines, and then moved into leadership and uh, did transformation work at a high level in IT and other industries and things. But the genesis really of my Ikigai journey occurred a number of years ago when I could tell my corporate career wasn't going to end the way I'd planned. I was running a big transformation effort at a very storied, historic company, one of the biggest in the U.S. And those kind of things, people just they get kind of get tired of it. They run their course, and I could see that was coming. So I started sharing just some ideas and insights and hopefully wisdom on LinkedIn, because I thought, when you need a job is not when you want to start communicating with people on LinkedIn. And because it was just me, I wasn't selling anything. I wasn't, trying to promote anything in particular or anything. It was just me sharing ideas. I thought, well, that's kind of a good reflection of, where I'm at. So I asked some friends and colleagues, if you were to put a brand on that, my writing, what would you do? What would you say? And this is long before personal branding was like a thing. And one guy, Ken Gordon is his name, he said, well, I don't know about your brand, but you ought to look into Ikigai. And I said, well, what's that? He goes, well, you just ought to look into it. And so I did. And what I found was that was the culmination of all the things that I truly loved doing and felt I was the most effective at and felt the most called to do. And so I took that learning and I put it into a process and an approach so that other people could understand their ikigai and live out their purpose. And and as I shared earlier, ikigai is not about your career, but certainly is expressed in your career. I mean, we spend a lot of our time at work, and so it's important to link that to your career. But people get caught up in the idea of I have to have this perfect career, as opposed to I have to understand myself and why I'm here and be able to express that in my career. And so I started digging into that and writing more about that. Eventually, Ken actually gave me the Ikigai Guy moniker, um, which I like. I thought it was really
Ikigai what
clever.
monetary?
The Ikigai Guy. He's the one that first called me the Ikigai Guy, and I kind of liked that. It's easy to helps people understand how to pronounce Ikigai as well.
It's very clever. I love it. And very simple
Yeah,
and memorable.
yeah. So yes, and so as luck would have it, shortly after I really got going on that, my career did end unexpectedly. It was part of a massive layoff, and it enabled me to, because I understood my ikigai, because I understood a way to express it in lots of different ways. When my corporate career ended, I was offered a early retirement, or I could take a different job. And I looked at that job, and because I understood my Ikigai, and I'll share what I call my Iki verse, so my purpose statement, which is to encourage, empower, and enable people to be all they were meant to be.
Hmm.
And I looked at the job that they offered me, and because I understood it, I could evaluate that job based on my Ikigai as opposed to my, a need for a job. And it would have just been a soul crushing job. I mean, it wasn't a bad job in that sense, but for me, for the kinds of things that I really value and wanted to be able to do, it just would have been awful. And so I was able to turn that down and take the early retirement and start my coaching and consulting practice and writing more. I will say that 6 months later, when the pandemic hit and all my coaching and speaking engagements and everything dried up, a soul crushing, steady paycheck sounded pretty good. but but I persevered, and it's worked out great. And then ended up as a part of that process, being given the opportunity to write a book, which was a lifelong dream of mine. And so all of that worked together to be the best experience of my life. Got more time with my grandkids. All kinds of wonderful things happened as a result of losing my corporate job because I knew my Ikigai.
Mm. I love that. And it sounds such an organic and beautiful and smooth way to transition that I think everybody wants that, David.
Right.
But I'm sure, there was some pretty messy middle to figure out kind of how to translate it. At least that's been my experience and working with people, who want to create more meaningful work. That it usually doesn't turn out that uh, easy kind of a step to go from being employed and having a steady paycheck into finding something of your own, right? And then translating into being able to also provide a living. And I definitely want to dive into that a little more and also touch on kind of the string that you mentioned about soul crushing work. Because I
Okay.
think this is why many people also find potentially Ikigai as one of the models, right? Because we are seeking for answers, because we want to find that work, that aligned work that is an expression of our essence.
Yeah, and what I want to, I think, emphasize is that no, that wasn't. I'd love to say it was just this nice, beautiful, peaceful, easygoing journey, and that I was completely zen and patient and all that during the entire time. But I wasn't. But I was more at peace because I had, kind of a North Star to lead me through experimentation and things like. I really thought I would do a lot of consulting. I thought I'd do a lot of consulting in the Lean Six Sigma space because that's what I'd been working in, and just nothing opened in that space, and it really directed me more inward to writing. And I started the newsletter, IkiQuest newsletter, and part of that was just an experiment, just to see, what would work and what would be an opportunity to express more creative endeavors. And it was in doing that one, I got a deeper understanding myself of what I wanted to do, but also I was really building the skills to write the book when the time came. I spent a couple of years writing something every day. The original vision for the newsletter was to do a daily Ikigai, so almost like a calendar, like a tear-off calendar kind of thing, except digitally. And so I was pushing myself to do something every day um, in that arena, and through that, got in the good habits of writing, and built up my writing muscle. And then when the book opportunity came, then I was ready, if you will.
Yeah.
But I think the key thing is understanding that whatever you do, there's going to be moments or things that aren't aligned, perfectly. I think that to me is the weakness of the Venn diagram, because In fact, I'd say the vast majority of my coaching clients come to me after trying desperately to figure out how to make that perfect job work in the Venn diagram, and it's just not there. There aren't jobs like that, or very rarely. I met Larry Wingett, who was a kind of a comedian speaker sort of guy, and one of the things that he was telling me was that he loved his speaking. And I met him before when I was a speaker at a conference at the same time, and he goes, but I do that like 30 minutes and then that's it. He goes, 99% of what I do is travel and write my bits and schedule and do these other things. And he goes, and I do that because when I'm on stage, I'm just the most alive.
Mm.
And I've thought about that a lot. You know, there's a lot in between that isn't 100% like scheduling his travel and things like that. It's not his ikigai at all, and yet it's part of enabling that.
Mhm.
And so helping people see too that the 80, I call it the 80-20 rule, but I mean, I don't call it that. I mean, people call it that, but I call it the 80-20 of Ikigai.
Mm.
Every moment that you're spending in your Ikigai, in that spot where you're the most satisfied, the most together, the most enjoyment, that's that 20% in the 80-20, right? That
Okay.
small percentage of things that really matter the most. So, and if you think about that too, and I don't know I could tell you the math, but it's 16 times. Every minute in your Ikigai space is worth 16 times those minutes when you're outside of it. All right. So in the 80-20 understanding. So it's not like you have to have your whole day, in your Ikigai moments to make a difference in your life. I mean, 1% more, finding those 1% opportunities in your day or in your job or in your relationships or in any other part of your life is 16 times the value of, living in those other moments. And so it's just sometimes small change like that that can really lead to a big difference in your life.
I love what you're saying. And first, I appreciate and thank you for pointing out kind of like not going for or having this overly idealized fantasy of vision that you're doing it 100% of the time. I think it's very true. And what came to me as you were speaking, like for podcast recording, like I love interviews. I love these moments of connecting with you and asking you questions. But like so much for the podcast is the editing behind the scenes, then making clips. And I don't like any of that, honestly.
Yeah,
So
see
it is
there.
like a that came to me as a real world example. So it really resonated as very true. But I think that most people are not looking for 100%, idealistic version. I think they just want to find that thing. What is that 20%? And
Yeah, yeah.
and
Well,
this whole conversation, I totally can appreciate how the work affect so much our lives, and like you said, the ikigai is not only segmented or this partitioned way where it's only your work, but I think a lot of our conversation will focus on work because so many people have struggles finding that 20%. Like, what
mhm.
is that thing that they could actually be doing? So, even the work, I think many people are clear, like, in relationships or in, if you're a parent, obviously, you kind of find purpose in different areas and different roles in your life and values. But kind of work seems to be this real struggle.
Yeah. Well, so what I encourage and talk about in the book are opportunities to see those glimpses of ikigai, times when you have felt the most alive. All right. And so, um, achievement stories. So as an example, I remember in third grade, which for me, as you can tell from my hair color, was a while ago.
It's
Um,
just blonde.
it's in yeah, we'll go with that. Um, uh, I was running into the building. I went to this beautiful old Gothic elementary school. I mean, it had a bell tower and the whole thing, and these giant stairwells and things. And being a boy, I was prone to try and run up or down the stairs and jump the stairs. And one of the big things was as we would turn around the big banister was see who could jump to the highest step. And I remember I was running in and running as hard as I could, and I got to the fourth step, and that was like the record. And I was about to like declare that I had gotten the record when I heard my teacher yell, "David!" and, and I slowly went down the stairs, and Mrs. Huff was her name. She was a sweet woman. She put her arm around me and she said, "Now, David, I wanted to tell you before we went into class that you won the governor's writing contest, right?"
Yeah.
And I didn't even remember there was a contest. I All I knew was we had to do this paper, and it was on Indiana, is where I grew up, and it was on Indiana and our experience with Indiana and things like that. And I had to write it like four times because I kept writing sort of the encyclopedia version, and she wanted me to write the my story, how I felt about Indiana and my experience. And by the fourth time, I finally got it right, and ended up winning a prize from the governor. The governor had written a book and things like that, and I got to go and do a ceremony and all this stuff. And the fun thing was in that class, we had just started dividing up like first, second, and third reading groups or whatever based on, I guess, aptitude. And I was always a really good reader, but I was in the second reading group. I think some of that was behavioral more than reading skill. And and when she announced it to the class, my friend Peter, he he slapped me on the back. He goes, "You won, and you're part of the second reading group." It was like I was a hero to the second reading group.
Mhm.
But as I thought about that, and I'm trying to remember the trigger that brought it back to my memory when I first started reflecting on it. As I thought about that, I thought, I loved telling stories. I loved inspiring people. I loved being an example, for others. And so even back then in third grade, I could see the kinds of things that got me jazzed and got me excited. And there are those moments in our life that tell us things about our ikigai and tell us, where we can spend that most time. And so I can look throughout my life and that varied career. I mean, if I could see moments of ikigai being a disc jockey and a sergeant in the Marine Corps and an engineer, and I was an engineer, by the way, in two different disciplines. My degree's in history, if that gives you any idea of how unusual my path was. But I can look back and see those moments when I was, coaching people or teaching or writing and communicating ideas and making breakthrough things happen. Those are the things that are part of my ikigai, and I can see when I had opportunities to do that in all those varied tasks, as well as when I didn't, and how little I enjoyed that. And so, part of what I encourage people to do is spend some time thinking about those, those achievement stories, those moments in your life, and why. Who was there? What was going on? Why did that stick out in your head? And what was the carryover? And begin to sort through that and think of those common themes, because those are clues to your ikigai. And it's probably a good point to also say, people often ask me to help them find their ikigai, and I tell them it's not about finding; it's already there. It's uncovering. It's that uncovering process, and that's what some of those stories will help you do, because we all have that when we're young. I have a 2-year-old grandson, and he's just himself. He just has so much fun. It was his birthday over the weekend. We celebrated his birthday. And he's just being him. He's doing all kinds of things. He's playing with toys. He's looking at me. He wants me to lift him up. There's nothing keeping him from expressing his full self.
Mhm.
But life happens. Life happens, and disappointments happen. And even the advice of well-meaning family and friends kind of starts to bury our ikigai. So it's more a process of uncovering than finding.
Yeah, as straight as it sounds, and I think it's frustrating it can sound when you're trying to figure out what would be that thing, and someone tells you, well, it's inside of you.
Right.
You're like, well,
Yeah.
if it is, then I would know it.
Yeah, and that's just it. I mean, we're almost conditioned, to hide some of that stuff. I mean, I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to write books from the time I was little. I think maybe even from the moment that the teacher yelled at me to come back down the stairs. By the way, she did remind me not to jump the stairs anymore after she told me about the award. But um, and and that's what happened. I mean, people discouraged me from that from the time I was little. You can't be a writer, it's hard. Writers are always poor and starving and whatever, right? And it wasn't until I really uncovered that essence and started working on it that an opportunity came to me. And I didn't even seek out this book opportunity. It was I
Yeah.
got an email. I have kind of a big following on LinkedIn, and so I get lots of offers. People send me emails all the time. Well, like yours, very nice offer to come join you on the podcast. But I get a lot of bogus ones too. I get some that come speak at our conference, and it'll only cost you $2,000 and things like that. So I got an email from someone who said they were an editor at a large publisher, and they wanted me to write a book on Ikigai. And I thought, yeah, sure. Publishers don't reach out
Mhm.
to authors and ask them to write them, and so I ignored it. I just ignored it for months, and then one day I had just this kind of sense I should check it. And I checked it, and I looked up the woman's name and looked her up on LinkedIn as Victoria Savannah, um, and she was a real editor at Wiley and Sons, and so I wrote her an email, apologized for delaying my response, and asked her if she was still interested. I'd love to talk, and she's, oh yeah, I think we really think a book on Ikigai is needed right now, and you're the perfect guy for it. And so that began the process. And I mean, I know I could name 100 people in my circle of friends who want to be authors who have, pasted their walls with rejection letters from publishers. And here one called me and wanted me to do it. And uh, but that was there all along, and it was covered up. Um, and even I had kind of forgotten it, frankly. And so that's the key, though, to keep doing things and experimenting and trying and embracing your curiosity, because it was that writing that I was doing that both uh, provided the opportunity, but also the skill and the ability to do it. I mean, I was a pretty good writer, and I'd written a lot even in my career and things, but it wasn't. I mean, writing a book is very different than writing in business or writing an article or anything like that. It's a very different endeavor. And so it was preparation for me for that.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a lot. So when did you connect the dots for yourself? When did you know that you like writing?
Yeah. Um, well, as I said, it was there when I was a kid.
Mhm.
But even at work, I would find times where I was enjoying. Like I had joined Northwestern Mutual. And I had this whiteboard on the wall outside of my office, and I just started writing things like quotes or questions of the day or things like that. And I loved the discussion that came from that. And it was kind of funny because I had this whiteboard and I started doing that, and people would come by the office to see what I'd written that day. And and we'd have a conversation, or maybe I would, dive deeper into, well, what did this mean, and why? How could you apply that to your life or to your work? And so, some of the other managers uh, apparently didn't like that, or they did like it at first, and they wanted their own whiteboard. And facilities said we can't put up any whiteboards. And they're
Mhm.
like, well, Dave has one. How come he has one? He should take it down. And apparently, facilities told me that because it was already up, they were going to leave it up. If they took it down, it would leave holes in the wall and stuff, but they wouldn't put up any more. And so I got this whiteboard but it became a communication and a conversation piece. And it was really those kind of conversations, as well as trying to find something that was meaningful, not just putting quotes up. I mean, everybody throws quotes out, right?
Mhm.
Um, but having something that dove deeper into the meaning of it and that impacted lives and helped people live out their calling. And I didn't know it in that sense at the time, but that was sort of that beginning process to go, wow, I really like this. I really, as much as I enjoyed, managing teams and the tactical work and things like that, and applying lean and Six Sigma and stuff, it was those moments when I was having those conversations, or around that same time, I was coaching my daughter's eighth grade girls basketball team, and they ended up being the uh, undefeated team and champion in the state, and then went to the state final game. We lost that, but we went to the national championships and finished sixth. And but the biggest thing that I took away from that were those moments where I helped them see, that gap between what they thought they could do and what they could do, and growing in their confidence and their level of understanding. Because none of those girls were actually, some of them were very good athletes, but none of them were great basketball players. And I think one of them played high school basketball for a year or something, but it wasn't like, they went on to the WNBA or anything like that. It was more about that moment and those challenges and facing adversity and all of the things you do in the course of a season, especially one that intense.
Mhm.
And so those moments, I just really dug that. That was just fun to me to see them grow and see them mature and realize things about themselves that, had they not had that experience, they wouldn't have been able to do.
Mm. That is an amazing feeling. And the reason I asked you about when did you kind of more consciously, remember that or realize that you enjoyed writing is because I've had trouble myself with this exercise, and I love how you're like, as I'm thinking questions, you're like tying it into your conversation. So I'm like, great, that was exactly what I wanted to ask. But I love how you gave kind of led us a little bit of what we can ask, for the person who's listening and is still seeking for some of the missing puzzle pieces is like what we can reflect on, right? What we can ask. And what I find is that we find those running in the hallway moments as kind of something that made us alive, right? Jumping, being outside, playing, climbing the trees, right? I clearly remember as a kid, those were the moments where I felt like alive, but I can't necessarily and sometimes people have trouble tying it to something that they did in school or something that could actually translate into work. What would you say for people who are a little bit stumped on the whole thing, finding those, ikigai moments or alive moments or flow moments earlier, kind of in their school or childhood? What else can they do?
Well, so I'll often ask my coaching clients a question based on I had this dog. His name was Nimrod, if you can imagine. And Nimrod's supposed to mean mighty hunter. It's a biblical name that means mighty
Okay.
hunter, but it also has some connotations of goofball and silly. And the dog was more the latter than the former. So he was pretty silly. But he just loved to chase a tennis ball. I mean, if I threw a tennis ball, he would chase it as long as I was willing to grab that ever more slobbery ball, right? And he would just do that all day and nothing else. And I'll ask my clients, to think about that level of interest, that level of satisfaction in doing something. What's your tennis ball? Think about what's your tennis ball. Or another variation of that is, like when I was writing my book, for example, I would be writing and I would realize it was dark, and my wife's like, "Do you want dinner?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll heat it back up," because I'd skipped dinner. I was just so into it that I forgot to eat. And so, are there moments, are there times when you forget to eat? And if so, that same level of question: What was that? What was going on? What was it about that? Who was involved? Were there other people involved? What were the circumstances? And diving into that, because those reveal those moments of Ikigai as well, and tell you some of the things that you really truly enjoy and are aligned with.
Mhm. And I would love for you to share a little bit more about how you made the transition. So because there are many people who are finding themselves laid off over the last couple of years, big tech, different functions, and corporate has really scaled back their hiring in certain areas. And you can see it on LinkedIn, the banners, and you know, um, how how long before you ended your corporate career did you start this exploration journey?
Oh, so I'll say going back 20 or more years, I started some of it really at the peak of my career. I had just turned 40. I'd been at GE for 10 years. And GE at the time, GE was the biggest, most profitable, most respected company in the world. And I had spent 10 years there and um, gotten recruited away to another company that was a large company you probably never heard of, but that processed financial transactions for all the big banks. In fact, the data center that I eventually led, one out of every five financial transactions in the United States was processed through that data center. So it was that big an operation. And it was failing. And so they hired me to turn it around, which is something I'd done. I'd created a network operations center at GE, and they wanted me to do that same thing at Metavante was the name of the company. And Metavante was going to either outsource the data center work or we were going to create a world-class center. And within 18 months, I mean, we could spend an hour just on the lessons there, but was able to turn it around. In fact, it was so successful that I was asked to provide the keynote speech at AT&T's National Customer Conference in New York City. Like they came and got me at the airport with a limo and the whole thing. I mean, it was like a big deal. But that's how successful it was. And so things were going really well. I was happily married, had 3 kids and home and all the things, right? All of the default things that we feel like we've got to do. I'd gotten my education. I built my career. I was physically fit and healthy relationships and all that. And then I had this dream. And in the dream, Steve Mariucci, and if you know who he is, but he was a football coach, NFL football coach of the dreaded 49ers, which and people in Wisconsin don't like the 49ers. And so Steve Mariucci, though, comes to me in a dream, which is really weird because I'm not a fan of his or the 49ers. And in the dream, he asked me, what would you do if you were done? And I remember this so well. It's one of those dreams that just won't leave you when you wake up. And so I asked him maybe the same thing that you're thinking. Well, what do you mean? If you're done? What do you mean by that? And he said it again. He goes, "What would you do if you were done?" And boom, I wake right up. I'm like, what would I do if I were done? Done what? And what it did for me, I just felt there's a message in that dream, and I began pondering and reflecting. What would I do if I were done? If I were done with my corporate career, if I were done, I happened to have made that company a great deal of money, and I got like several $100 million. Okay, and I got a $20,000 bonus, which is nice, but it's not $200 million. And I thought, well, maybe I should quit working for other people and start working for myself. And it just began a whole series of explorations, some of which were disasters. I tried consulting and was offered an equity stake in a company as a result of some of the consulting I did. And so I had left my very secure and very successful corporate job and got ripped off, completely defrauded, and ended up with no equity stake and no job and had to kind of rebuild my career. But I did things like that. And in each of those, I sort of kept that as my touchstone. And there were things I was learning about myself that part of what, and again, why I wrote the book, and it was to put all of those things in sort of a comprehensive understanding because I experimented a lot. Some were successful, some weren't. But it took me 20 some years to come to that understanding. And like you said, there are plenty of people, and sadly, far too many people now that are struggling and want to accelerate that reflection a little bit for them because you need a job. We all recognize that, and we want one as much aligned as we can with where we're at. So that's really, I mean, that was the beginning for me. I rebuilt my career after that at Northwestern Mutual, and then and then I hit another roadblock where I turned 55 and found out that there was well, the sequence was I had again delivered several $100 million in benefit to the company. I had been uh, congratulated by the CEO at a all hands, all company meeting. And then a few weeks after that, I got my review, and it was like, keep up the good work. And I got a 1.37% pay raise. And I'm like, isn't that an interesting number? I mean, like, why not 1%, not 2%, not 1.5%, 1.37%? And I went to a mentor of mine, and I said, help me understand this. I'm shaking the CEO's hand a couple of weeks ago, and now I'm, yesterday's news or whatever. And he said, well, I'll tell you, but if you tell anyone I said this, I'll deny it. I said, okay. He goes, there's an unwritten policy here that you've aged out. You're 55. You only have 10 years to retirement, and you don't have enough time to get promoted twice in their mind. And so you can't get promoted once. And so your career is essentially over. And there I was. I still had many years left to work, and my career was over. I was facing no more promotions and 1.37% pay raises for years to come. And that really forced me to take a look at what did I want? What did I want out of this job? What did I want out of my career? Because they didn't take the job away. I still had the same duties, the same responsibilities, still wanted me to hand them hundreds of millions of dollars in benefit, and I had to think about how was I going to approach that, and where was I going to find my satisfaction. And I did begin a search for other jobs and things like that. But one thing that I did was that's part of when I uncovered my Ikiverse, but I began looking for those opportunities to encourage, empower, and enable people. And more, especially since at that point, if my career is over, there's no reason to go, there's always meetings, right, that you got to go to that are career meetings. They're not really valuable, but you got to be seen, I just dropped every bit of that. Every bit of that I dropped and began focusing on those opportunities like mentoring, or I began studying. I had a chance to study design at Cornell. And that's something I never would have explored if that job had continued to grow, and I would have been really involved in, the strategies and budget meetings and all that kind of stuff. And I dropped all that and studied design. And the cool thing about design is it teaches you to listen better. And I would have thought, people ask me, are you a good listener? I would have thought most of my friends or people where even I would have said I was a good listener. What I found, though, was I was a willing listener. I wasn't a very good listener, but I was willing to listen. Mm-hmm. But through the design process, it's really good design is about understanding the needs of people, even when they can't express it, and hearing what they're not saying, and getting that. And there's several processes. Empathy interviewing is one of them. But through that, I actually became, I think, a better employee, obviously, but a better husband, a better father, better grandfather, and a better person, and a better person in my faith. And all of that was because I was starting to look for those opportunities within the structure of my existing job that I could put more energy into that were more aligned with my Ikigai. And so a number of really cool things like that happened for me, even in the midst of, I could have been really bitter, and that's kind of the thing. You can be bitter, or you can be better. And I would love to say that, moments after I had that conversation, that I was like, okay, well, this will just really work out well for me. But I didn't. I was pretty angry for a while. but I decided that wasn't serving me, and that's when I, went deeper into how I could live out those moments of ikigai in the existing situation, whether I liked it, whether it was fair, whether it was what I wanted to do for the next 10 years or not.
So when you say that the process started 20 years ago or so, right? Did you have that pull on your own heart that you were longing for something more than just, even though you're successful in the corporate world, I find that often that there's still that voice inside, the part of that essence that's saying there must be something more.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing is, there's a you can almost think of it as two halves to life, right? I mean, there's the default path that we all go on, and that's not a bad thing. You know, go to school, don't jump the stairs in third grade, right? Behave, and get a good job, maybe get married, get a dog, get a house. I mean, there's things, right? Move up in your career, and then there's a point where that default path just quits working for you. And for me, it was after that dream, frankly. It just did nothing seemed like the next was just another, promotion within that or something. I got a lot of really great promotions, and I was a VP and an executive at a number of storied companies, but it was never that. For me, it was always more about autonomy. The higher up I went, the more autonomy I had, and that was always my goal. And I mean, I did want to make more money and provide for my family, but it was never like oh, this much money is my goal. It was more, can I get my kids in the right school that I want for them? Can we afford the home we need? That kind of thing. But even then, after that, it just none of that seemed, seemed like there should be something else, and there wasn't a next. And so I began searching for that next. And I think a lot of people are there, in life in general. And so if you think about that first half of life, you're building the structure or the vessel. The second half is about what goes in it. And that's really the Ikigai thing is what can I do to live out those higher valued things? Because again, jobs come and go. 56% of everyone who's over the age of 50, and I mean, even if you're in your 40s, it's not that far away. 56%, according to the Wall Street Journal, have their careers ended prematurely. So more than half. And of those people, 70% never achieved the same level of, in the hierarchy or salary again. And so, when we become dependent on our jobs or our identity is wrapped up in that, then when we lose those jobs, we're kind of left with, well, who am I? And that's where it's so important to have that sense and to get that earlier rather than later, because jobs do come and go. They don't define us. And I can tell you in my own experience, a number of the careers that I've had, those industries didn't exist before. I was working on MRIs before people knew what an MRI was. And then that was highly complex. I mean, it's measuring the vibrations of protons in the body and things. But like almost all things, it's simplified through automation and other things. I mean, now we call it AI, but it's always been this path of automation or simplification to where we were highly paid engineers back, the late 80s, early 90s, making $100,000 a year back then. And now a lot of those engineers are lucky to make 30 or 40,000 because the systems are so much simpler. A lot of the automation does the troubleshooting. And so that skill isn't needed. So had I stayed in that role, I would have been on a downward path. So even if your job doesn't disappear, things change. Opportunities come and things change. IT was an opportunity that I was working again for GE, help build out their remote service capability. And I remember this manager goes, this internet thing may turn into something. We should start a team. And I was like, oh, I'll do that. But I mean, who knew, right, that it would be what it is, or that it would lead into things. But IT is, was the same thing. It's had its valleys and peaks, where certain skills, like you used to be able to make a very significant living doing net masking. I don't know if you know what that is, but it has to do with addressing, IP addressing, and things like that. And there were limits on that. And if you had 100 computers, user on that one network, it would do a certain thing, and you'd build a kind of an algorithmic template on it and maximize that. Well, now nobody even knows what those are because everything is done, behind the router and things like that. So that skill set that used to pay a lot of money would be like somebody adding numbers together instead of in a spreadsheet. I mean, it would be that level of lost value, what used to have value. And so, I mean, careers are always going to be like that, even in ones you enjoy or ones that seem stable. Companies like the one I worked for, Northwestern Mutual, was a storage company and had a history of never having had a layoff, and they were proud of that. And then all of a sudden, they
Yeah.
decided they needed layoffs, not for financial reasons, but for strategic reasons. I mean, just overnight changed from that style, and people had been there their entire careers and thought they were going to remain there, and a lot of us did not. so, so that's where I just want to encourage people to take that step back and get that understanding of yourself, because it's going to strengthen your ability to find those jobs that line up, but also to deal with those ups and downs of careers that happen inevitably. And maybe even we're probably facing a new wave of change with AI and things like that, and understanding that, plus having that sense of depth. That's the value anyway. I mean, just like I said, net masking, or adding numbers together in columns. I mean, all of those kinds of things are so rudimentary and are automated. There's going to be even more and more things that AI will automate. And so it's you finding those moments where you're the most human, and that's where your value is. That's why you were created. That's why you're here, on the earth. And that's the opportunity.
Mm. I love that. But I think that really resonates. I mean, what you're saying is speaking to my heart and my soul. So,
Oh,
those moments where you're like, yes, yes, you know that it's true, or at least it's true for you uh, in this moment. And as you were talking about it, I think a lot of people were seeing exactly what you were talking about, like specific jobs, specific functions, going through that. And kind of as you were speaking, it's like it sounds like it's always been a cycle, but it's different when it hits you.
yes. Yeah, absolutely. It is. It is. It's very different when it hits you. My grandfather, my dad's dad, Grandpa Marlow, he was a boiler maker. He was a welder on steam engines,
Mhm.
and he was lucky enough that he every time a railroad would change to diesel engines, he would move on to another one, and he had several transfers, and was able to ultimately retire, having done that. But that's really rare, and even then, he had some serious disruptions in his work, with layoffs and other things like that. But yeah, it's very rare that what you're doing now, stays the same, uh, and I think it's accelerating. I mean, that he was able to, over 30, 40 years, whatever it was, kind of catch up, and they were still operating some steam engines in 1964 when he retired. But but that's not the pace of change today. It's faster all the time.
Mhm.
And again, even companies, and I say, I use Northwestern Mutual as an example, and it's a fine company and a good company, and I was happy that I worked there. They were 150 years old at the time, and now I think 170, and very storied and stayed, and even they have had to change. And if companies like that are committed to being the same way forever have to change, then certainly other companies, especially newer ones, are going to. And yeah, the world is changing for every career,
Mhm.
and I mean, that can be a scary thing for sure, but it can also be a kind of inspiring thing. It's like, wow, I could do something new. I
Mhm.
mean, I I get bored very easily. I always tell people that I've been married for over 40 years, and I want to keep the same wife, but everything else is subject to change. And um, And even then, our relationship has grown and matured. But I mean, to me, it's exciting to see new things come and new opportunities, and to see the chance for people to live out more meaningful work. Part of what I liked about some of the lean and Six Sigma work that I did was there were all these wasteful processes. And, these people were doing this stuff over and over again every day, dealing with bad process, with having to deal with customer calls from people that, things didn't work the way they were. We helped that, and we helped them enjoy their day-to-day job a lot more. And I mean, that's really an exciting thing to be able to focus on those moments when you're your best, and when you're serving other people, or when you're serving yourself in the sense of something edifying for you. And so when we can get rid of, and I'm a strong believer at 80-20, 80% of what's going on is worthless. Let's get rid of that. Let's grow that 20%. And when we're doing that, we're going to make jobs for people that they'll love, and careers and opportunities to be themselves and express their Ikigai the best, and serve, themselves and others.
Oh my gosh, that you are saying it, it's so true. But this 80% that we are busy with, it actually keeps us from finding that 20%.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because you're tied down in that, right?
Yeah.
You're doing that kind of work, and yeah, you're
And your
burning through your
energy,
time.
your life force is tied into it, and you're just too drained.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And so, one of the things that I share a number of things in the book that were examples at work. So I'll share one right here. I was again a director level and had several other peers. I mean, like there were 40 of us in that department, and they wanted us to manage the budget like down to the nth degree. Every $10,000, every month, up or down. I mean, it's like a $40 million budget. So $10,000 is rounding error, right, or noise. But they were wanting us to do that, and we had to do it. And if we didn't meet the criteria, then we had a meeting with, we call it the Bobs, so right, the office space reference, but some bosses, and explain why it was $10,000 over on a $40 million budget or whatever for for a month. Well, anyway, we did all that stuff, and then at the end of the year, we got together and we talked about it, and then they said, okay, we're going to do it again. I'm like, wait a minute. What did we learn from this? What are we going to do differently? What are we going to change? And the answer was nothing. We're just going to do it again. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. Why would we do this again? It's a waste of time. It was a waste of time before, and now we know it's a waste of time. Why would we do it again? Well, you just have to do it. And so I walked away kind of frustrated with that. But I got to thinking, we were keeping it in like this master spreadsheet, okay? And I had a line, and I had to put my numbers in the line. And I thought, well, I'm just not going to put any numbers in. I'm just not going to do it. Then I realized if I don't do that, they'll see that, and then I'll have meetings with the Bobs. And then I thought, what if I just delete the line? Would they even notice? And so I just deleted the line, and they didn't notice. And 6 months later, I was having lunch with a peer, and he goes, "Oh man, I gotta cut it short. I got a meeting with the Bobs, right?" And he goes, "How's things going with you? Have you had any meetings with the Bobs?" I said, "No, I haven't had a single meeting or a problem all year, and my budget's just fine." He goes, "Well, how'd you do that?" And so I told him, and he exclaimed something profane, and it's like, "Oh, you ah!" And he was frustrated, but he was also impressed, right? At the same time, he's like, "I love this, and I hate you at the same time." But I encourage people to just, to be very fervent in eliminating those things. I thought, I'm not doing this. Now, how can I not do this? And look for those opportunities while still, managing my team. And I mean, if there was something of value, I would have done it because I want to respect, the process of my peers. But yeah, I was always looking for something to eliminate like that, or meeting that I didn't have to go to, whatever. Because like you said, when our energy is going into that, it's not available for the 20%. And if you can start to get a little gain in that 20%, you can get that flywheel going. And all of a sudden, now you're thinking of newer things and better things, and it gets faster, and you get more and more of your time spent in the 20% space. And that's really the key to process improvement, as well as to living your Ikigai.
Mm, I love that. So it sounds like you have affinity for Japanese things or processes, Lean, Six Sigma, or Ikigai.
Yeah, yeah, I do. Kaizen. A lot of what I teach too is personal Kaizen,
Mhm.
setting yourself up to to have small incremental things like I run and I run marathon and half marathons and the way I started that process. I mean, if you had told me, you have to run a marathon, you'd like freak out at the big gap from where you are to where you go. But if you break it down
Mhm.
and lower the fear, you can do almost anything. So my running started with a minute of running and 4 minutes of walking, and another minute of running and 4 minutes of walking, and that was it. And that was all I committed to. It's all I said I would do. It's all I saw in front of me. But as I did that, I gained the strength and I started running a minute and a half and less walking time, and then 2 minutes. And before long, I was running 4 minutes and walking one. And within a few months, I was running 5Ks and then half marathons, and I run a marathon, and I run all the time now, and in my 60s, and able to do that. No knee problems, or anything like that, because I approached it from that Kaizen perspective of doing something small, keeping the fear down, and growing into it. And so that's a practice. I think that again it aligns obviously with Kaizen is a principle in Lean, but it's also applicable to our personal life and to Ikigai and almost anything. I can help you figure out a way to do almost anything with Kaizen.
So I love how you're talking about the process, and there are a couple of things that are coming to me. I want to ask you to walk us through this process then of like somebody has that tug on their heart, that call on their heart that my work sucks, like another spreadsheet, another dashboard. It just like feels so empty and meaningless. And bosses are adding more line items. It's kind of like very hard to be taking them away because new ones get added non-stop. It sounds good, but like the reality is like it's like left, right, and center with new line items in corporate.
Mhm.
And so like inside of me, when I listen to my essence, I'm yearning for something like something different. And it could be a scenario where somebody is still employed, right? And is like totally exhausted by what they're doing in this, 9 to 5, or somebody who's been laid off. Can you walk us through kind of like process or steps of how can they bridge the gap to end up where you're at to doing something on their own terms and meaningful?
Sure. Well, so two things that'll help kind of set the stage for that. The first is the idea of Kaizen, and when you think about Kaizen, it literally translates to small change or continuous improvement. The other aspect of Kaizen is eliminating fear and getting and deprivation. So helping you not feel like, oh, I've got all this I would have to do, right? Just, I mean, think about that. Uncovering my life purpose. That's a huge, huge thing. It's a big thing. It's very fear driven. Like having to run a marathon.
Mhm.
So it's allowing yourself, first of all, that small step that I can do and commit to today. The
Mhm.
other is, and if I can get my hand right, this is called the Uzumaki swirl, and it's symbolic of the journey because it starts out way outside in our understanding, and we move narrower and narrower. And I probably won't be able to do it because it's backwards on my screen, but anyway, and refining, and so it's a continuous journey of ever tightening and ever refining understanding. So giving yourself that permission, that freedom to know that where I'm at today is good enough, and it might not be where I need to be tomorrow, and that's okay. Growing into it. So those are the first kind of conditions that allow you to do that. But it's looking for those small changes. So I had a friend who, and this will be an example that's not his purpose, but aligned. He wanted to work out, and he we had a great gym. Again, Anim was a great company. Had this great gym right in our building, and he could go there. And he was like, "Oh, I just can't make myself do that." And I said, "Okay, can you pack your gym clothes into a bag and bring it to work every day?" He's like, "Well, yeah, okay, do that. Do that for a few days. Just commit to that. Don't commit to working out. Don't commit to doing anything else other than bringing your workout stuff." So he did that for a few days. And I said, "Well, how's that feel? Could you do that for another 30 days or so?" And he's like, "Yeah." I said, "Okay. How about now I'd like you to go, get dressed. Just get dressed and then take them off and get dressed your regular clothes and go home." Because what he was thinking was, I got to go in, I got to get sweaty, I got to get a shower, I got to get dressed, get home. It's going to be dark. It was like winter in Wisconsin. Sun was setting at like 4 o'clock or something. And he didn't want to face that. And so I just kept introducing those things to the point where he agreed to sit on the bench in his clothes for a minute and then get undressed and put his regular clothes back on and go home. And he did that in like 2 days, and then he sat there and said to himself, he's telling me the story, "I'm already dressed. I might as well just go work out."
Yeah.
And so he would go work out. And then it began a process and a habit for him that he continued for years and lost a lot of weight and a whole number of other things that contributed to him. And now again, that's equivalent to the way we want to approach purpose work. It's also something that he was out of shape and he wasn't feeling well. Well, when he got home, what did he want to do? He certainly didn't want to spend any time in reflection, right? He didn't want to dig deeper. He wanted to sit in front of the TV and eat potato chips, right?
Or
And
now
so
with
that's
social media, it's replaced with this.
right, right. Yeah. Or thumb, right? Okay, so because he was working out, he felt better. He was more alert. When he got home, he now had that energy to invest in reading for a little bit or doing some reflection writing or doing some of the exercises that are important in understanding ourselves. And so it's all about setting up those little things that will enable you to do it and build that foundation and giving yourself the freedom to do something small. When I write, I will sometimes commit only to opening a Word document, a blank Word document, and I will walk away because then I don't have any fear of I don't know what I'm going to type. I don't know what's going to be on there. Or what if it's not, whatever. It's same thing with writing the book. I mean, here's my dream coming true, and obviously I'm feeling pressure to make it the best book ever, and that the editors will be fine with, that people will buy all the things. And I had to I'm only going to commit to, sometimes I'll even type, I'm going to type a terrible version of this, and this paragraph is going to be terrible. I mean, I'm like literally typing those words and giving myself permission. And then I keep going, and next thing I know, I got a good paragraph. And next thing I know, I got a page. And next thing you know, my wife's reminding me that dinner is already cold.
I
And
love
so that's the key, and that's how all of this, is begun.
I love that. So and then you started. I love how a friend mentioned to you Ikigai, right?
Uh huh.
These
Yeah.
these synchronicities, these breadcrumbs that come being open to different. It coming from different places. Like I interviewed a lady and Jenny Dempsey, and she was laid off, and she applied to hundreds of jobs and wasn't getting any response, let alone offers. So she was so desperate, and she went to a friend's, and friend had a junky table, and she just like took that table home and gave it a second life. And it literally turned into a metaphor, that she could restore something, and she yearned, her own validation, professional expression. Like she needed a restoration of, not only her own value, her work, but her soul, kind of what this process did to her. And it's just like that openness of how the dots and the puzzle pieces can connect. Can you tell us a little more? Like, did you start kind of writing then once you got that, like, puzzle piece. Did you start writing an article on LinkedIn a day, or kind of how did that Word document or kind of that little process start for you?
Sure. Yeah. So the Ikigai thing really was a lot what you just described, very serendipitous in the sense of both my own work on it. The more I looked into it, the more I wanted to write about it and share about it. Most of what I wrote about was, Lean Six Sigma, and I was doing consulting on the side and speaking and things like that. And so a lot of it was that. But I was getting some great feedback when I'd write about it. People were very curious. And I was also, in writing, you learn yourself too, right? You learn about yourself, you learn about the topic. And the more I researched it, the more it became an interest to where it sort of started. I wrote businessy stuff and Ikigai, and it just sort of over time went this way. But it was that almost serendipitous thing that came about again when you're exploring, when you're doing it with the idea of trying something, understanding something, learning about it. That's when those moments come up. Or as you said, I love the coffee table thing. I mean, that's like a revelation, and an example for you. The more open you are to that, the more those moments will come out. I mean, it's well known what red car syndrome, right? When you buy a red car, all of a sudden you notice red cars. If you're looking for those Ikigai moments, those clues, then they come about. And you'll see them, but they're there all the time. Half the time, though, we're so busy running to the next meeting, or like you said, applying for jobs and getting nothing back. It's embracing those moments of serendipity and opportunity to see some things and to experience new things. And it's certainly nothing I'd love to say, yeah, years ago I planned this out and this is exactly how I intended it to go. And nothing has happened the way I planned. Nothing, nothing at all. And I couldn't be happier. I mean, it was a lot of things like when we had our first grandson, and our daughter-in-law asked us to watch him a few days a week. And I had like this whole mental model of where I was going from my career and time. And I had no interest. I mean, I loved my grandson, don't get me wrong, but I had no interest in doing that. I had other things I wanted to do. And it's completely flipped. It's like I love every moment of that time. Then his sister came along. We have two more grandkids from our daughter's kids. We love spending time with them. If I could eliminate almost everything but spending time with grandkids, I would do that now. None of which, like I said, was my dream. There's a good commercial. I can't remember who it's for, but it's a guy. He retires and he's going to buy a vintage Datsun 280Z,
Okay.
and then his son gets transferred, and they want his daughter to live with the grandparents and finish high school. And so he's like, okay, well then a series of things like she's helping him or painting his nails to practice painting her nails, things like that. And eventually he comes to her and he hands her keys to a brand new like Corolla or some small car. And she goes, wait a minute, what about your dream? He goes, this is my dream now.
Mm.
Helping her and supporting her. And so I feel a lot like that grandfather. I had some thoughts and things, and I thank God every day that I didn't follow through with those and had the other opportunity. But yeah, it's setting up those opportunities and looking for potentiality and opportunities in things. And the more you know yourself and start with that, I encourage people to start with Ikiverse just because it's an operating model. EP Box said all models are wrong, some are useful. And so it's a useful model and it gets better over time and you refine it.
What is
Um,
Equiverse?
Ikiverse, so that's the your purpose statement, if you will. And it's a way to communicate your Ikigai to others. So as an example, I told you earlier that I encourage, empower, and enable people to be all they were meant to be. Now that tells you something. And if I were to come to you about a job or looking for things, you're now enabled to help me and support me in ideating on those and looking for those opportunities. It's almost like our red car, right? Now you've got a red car you can help me look for as well. And I encourage that because the deep self-reflection of understanding yourself, that essence at the deepest level, that doesn't happen overnight. And yet we don't want to wait till that happens. You don't want to wait 25 years like I had to wait, right? You want to be able to operate in that. And so I use the example of the atomic model. So the atom, right? We've all seen the atom model with the nucleus with the protons and the neutrons and the electrons spin around. Now, I don't know if you knew this. I didn't know this till a few years ago. That's apparently not even remotely how an atom actually works. That's not even close, right? But it's a working model that as kids, it helped us sort of understand. Yeah, the electrons don't even exist. They're all potentials. And it's like deep, deep physics. But the point is, for years, I mean, as long as I could remember, we thought that was the way atoms were constructed, but they're not. But it got us to an understanding that enables us to get to a better understanding. And that's what an Ikiverse does for you. Yeah.
Okay. I love that. Well, when you say the Ikiverse, is that like same as your why? Like understand.
No. Oh, I love that you asked that. Okay, I'm going to say something that'll probably get me in trouble with some people, but Simon Sinek is wrong. Okay, when not really,
I
but
love it. I love it. Go for it.
okay. So your why is often, the what you're going to do. So I had a client, for example, who had been a mom, and her why was being a mom, and now her kids were grown and gone, and that why was gone, right? But in her heart of hearts, what she enjoyed about being a mom was helping people grow and supporting them in that, and a whole host of other things that she could do in other ways. Okay. And so our Ikiverse should be one of a kind because our calling, the who we are and why we're here is unique. And 1,000 people can have that why, and it should last a lifetime. You should be able to experience it in everything that you do, in harmony with whatever you're doing. And so it transcends the whys that most people have, like career or even family, and those are all good things. You want to be a good parent. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, we need more good parents, right? That's all. That's also in that, and that's part. And so that's the difference between a why. A why is, sort of generic and can apply to anybody. Many people can have that why. Your Ikiverse is you, and uniquely you, and that expression of it becomes uniquely you. Even if you were an accountant and I was an accountant, if we had different Ikigais, we would express being an accountant in a different way. Whereas if we both had being an accountant as our why, we'd probably do it the same way.
And when you say that everybody, it's unique to you, unique to every person, like it resonates as truth to me. At the same time, I see that we can be very stuck on this generalized version that so many people will say, "Oh, I also want to help people. I want to empower
Right.
people."
Right.
And it's also not helping them to move forward, to figure it out.
Right, right. Yeah, so that like anything, I mean, that's one reason I'm sometimes hesitant to share mine because then people latch onto that and that's what they think theirs is
No,
too.
I just have heard, like,
Uh,
I hear it so much from other people. I wanna help people, like, people identify with Enneagram too because they
mhm,
read The Helper, and they're like, "That's me," you know?
right. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
the difference is in that your understanding of that mixed with who you are, your personality, your experiences, and other things. That's where that uniqueness comes through. So one of the other aspects of it is a value. I teach to come up with three verbs that really speak to you, and then a value. And the value for me was integrity. And when I say integrity, I don't mean like you're not going to steal from me or you're telling me the truth. I'm talking about integrated self and being the most integrated. Because when we're living outside of that Ikigai space, we're kind of subverting ourselves and we're disintegrating a bit. We're not the true
A
integrated
lot, a
person
lot.
we are. Yeah, and we're disintegrating.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of people in corporate world feel that disintegration. That's where burnout comes from. And the longer you're outside of that space, the more disintegrated you become.
well, it
And so
starts at
it's
school. I look at my son.
oh
He goes to the school, the system, and like he comes back, he's tired.
yeah.
Sorry, I
Yeah, that's
interrupted you. It
oh
starts
no, no,
at
please. I love that because that to me that's a huge thing because school really isn't right about learning and growing as you are. It's about rules and do these things. And what I call the one of the metaphors I use at the beginning of the book is the dragon thou shalt. It's covered with thou shalt scales, and we get the thou shalts from the get go. Just like I was told not to be a writer because writers starve and you don't want to starve and all those things, right?
Mhm.
And be quiet and sit and focus, stay straight. And um, uh, that's why I was in the second reading group because I
Sit in the
didn't want to do.
classroom for 7 to 2 or 8 to 5 when you're young,
uh,
you want to run, right? You're full of enthusiasm and life. Come back to class. I mean, literally.
yeah, yeah. My oldest granddaughter loves to draw, and she was early on. She was drawing, and she was being told that she was scribbling.
Mhm.
And oh man, you want to get the Ikigai guy unhappy. Get on my granddaughter like that, right? And so I sat down with her, and it was like, your art is your art, and we just started working on some things. And if you ask her today, she'll tell you she's an artist. I mean, she loves that idea, and I have hopefully ingrained in her not to let the world tell her she's not, or that this line or that line is that's not a dog, that's not a tree. I mean, just like even doing something, and you could do this with your son when they come home and they show you a drawing. If you go, what is it? What are you doing? You're presupposing that it's supposed to be something, right? As opposed to, tell me about that. Tell me about that. Well, it's this and this, and then if it doesn't look like a dog, right? It's supposed to be a dog, and it doesn't look anything like a dog. It's okay, and
Love that.
it often won't, right?
Yeah.
Especially when they're really young. But if you ask them, tell me about that.
Mhm.
That gives them the opportunity and just gives them a level of acceptance that, and again, trying not to bury their ikigai any more than the world. But you're right. That's school is about compliance and about doing budgets and not deleting the line. I mean, no way would school teach you to delete the line, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's like how to beat the essence out of you, not to how to honor
Right,
your essence. And your
right.
granddaughter is very lucky to have you. Well, I could talk to you like all day. I wanted to
Uh,
ask you, David, is there anything else you want to share or point out from your book and from all the work that you're doing, as we wrap up the conversation?
I would just, want to let everyone know that there is hope for you. There's a wonderful opportunity. There's something, really special that is for you, and it's more than a job. I mean, there may be a wonderful job out there too, and keep going, keep looking for it. And I would encourage them to read my newsletter, IkiQuest, because almost daily there's something there that helps with that process. So gives examples of ways to test and to see, because it's not a one-time thing, and it's an encouragement all the time, as well as some examples. And then the other is obviously the book, because I put all of that together in one place so that someone could have that tool. But it's not a how to, it's not a 10 steps to hack your life or anything like that. It's really a framework that respects and honors the uniqueness of you and gives you that opportunity for self-discovery. And so I hope people will take advantage of that, or drop me a line on IkiQuest. You can email me, or I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit too, and I'd love to hear any questions you had along the way, or let me know that you uncovered your Ikigai. I love those stories even more.
I love that. So your book is called The Ikigai Way.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's available anywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, independent bookstores. A lot of people like to order them through independent bookstores, and you can do that as well and support small small bookstores. It's on audio too. It's on audio and in Kindle and then beautiful hardcover. I have to say, I really love as much as it's my book. I love it because it's a beautiful book and it would be a nice part of your collection too. So I encourage people to, however you receive information. You know, the audiobook's awesome. That turned out really great, and so any one of those.
It's beautiful. Like, first of all, I was looking at the design, and I know you spoke about design a little bit
Yeah.
before. And second of all, it sounds like an amazing, amazing gift to yourself, or also gift for someone else. You know, if somebody's birthday is coming up or holidays are coming up, it looks amazing. And then, how can we sign up for your newsletter?
Just go to ikiquest.substack.com, and it's a super easy subscription. It's not a subscription like paid. I mean, you can do the free, and if you don't like it, it's an easy just okay, no longer there. You don't have to go through like page after page after page. So it's a very low commitment thing to check out, but you can check it out. And like I said, there's all the current article as well as all the prior articles are all there available. And then, like I said, also you can email me through that. When you receive the email of the article, you can just send me a note, and I'm happy to chat. And I have a lot of conversations like that, and give people some suggestions along the way.
I love that. And you can navigate to this also through the show notes. I'll include the links in the show notes. And as we end, I wanted to ask you, do you get tired of talking and writing and speaking and doing all this work and creating right around this one subject? Because you touched upon it earlier, and I have done it myself, and I know other people can relate. It's one thing when you kind of organically start and you're interested and passionate about something and you can create posts on social media and content, but then when it becomes the work, a job, and you like discipline and generate income with that, all of a sudden it takes on a different energy, if you will.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a like I love coffee. I'm a huge espresso fan, as you probably can detect. And I'll write about coffee once in a while and things and just, enjoying it. And people say, you should own a coffee shop. And I said, I don't think you understand. I enjoy drinking fine coffee and I enjoy the process of it. I enjoy learning about how it's made and how it's grown and all of those things. I do not want to run a coffee shop, which would be like the worst part of coffee for me. Not that that's not a great job, and people are doing that and enjoying it. And so that's where my writing, I work very hard to that it's not a chore, that it always stays that fresh thing, because I don't want it to become the job that I hate, right? I want it to become the expression of my ikigai that I love. And also recognizing there are plenty of things that will be opportunities for you to enjoy your ikigai, like drinking wonderful espresso and savoring it and the experience of even making it, that won't make you any money, and that's okay too. But yeah, those I love telling about ikigai because I want people to have this. I want so bad for everyone else to have that same level of experience. And so for me, this is something, it's like, try to stop me from talking about it.
I love that. I love that
Yeah.
because I find it's difficult. It's difficult for us to know which is the proverbial ikigai and which is the coffee,
Mhm.
which ones from your interest, which to pick, to be your ikigai versus your hobby. Like, what would you, since you work with people and you advise and it's your life's mission to help people with this, what can you add? How can people discern?
Yeah, I think part of the discernment is trying. I mean, exploring, understanding. I love to learn new things. There's very few things that I've learned that I would want to do, for a living. I was growing, my kids got me one of these like mushroom growing kits. So I grew mushrooms that we could, grow and then saute and put in dinner. And that was fascinating. But I have a friend who actually owns like this mushroom slicing company. And It's one of those. Okay, when you were 8 years old, did you say someday I'm going to own a mushroom slicing company? No, he didn't. But what he loved was providing something high quality for people. And I mean, that was the difference for him. I mean, like he had to, I mean, here in, southeastern Wisconsin, he was like traveling to France to get machines. They have some of the best machines in the world for uh, slicing them, right? And so he bought that, and so for him, the Ikigai part of that was providing fresh, quality food for people that wanted it, and at a high level. So it was exploring though, and exploring and understanding himself and opportunities. I mean, he looked into mushroom slicing. I forget the whole process of how he did it, but I've learned too that I just really like learning things, and there are very few things that I want to learn and then keep doing. Um, but in exploring those, I've found and added more things like running. I run almost every day, and that's something that's a part of my life. I don't make a living at it, but I mean it's interwoven into my life. Unlike mushroom growing, or I learned how to make beer. I don't make beer anymore, or I do make coffee every day, but I don't want to grow it or
Coffee
anything like
shop.
that. Right, right. So a lot of it is that experimentation and finding those elements that you liked the best, and then incorporating them into things, or as in the case of like the coffee, let's say the coffee shop, it's taking those parts that you don't enjoy and getting them out as much as you can. So if I were to own a coffee shop, for example, my focus I would hire an accountant. I wouldn't run the books. I probably would, get a buyer. I mean, I would do as much 80/20 on that as I could to find out where my 80 or my 20% was, and grow that. And that's the other part of it, is just being, almost fanatical about 80/20, 80/20, 80/20. Just keep breaking those things down, because the signs are all there. I mean, looking back, it's very easy. It's always
Yeah.
easy. Like the saying goes, it's always so easy to know where the light switch is once the light's on, right? But it is committing to trying those things and looking for the elements in whatever you're doing where you're feeling the best, where you're enjoying the most, where you're getting the most satisfaction, maybe even what you're the best at, and focusing on those.
I love that. David, thank you so much. I know I subscribe to your newsletter and I want to read the book, and I so appreciate you being here.
It's been my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.